April 4, 2026, 7:30 p.m. Hopetown, Bahamas. Lynette Hooker, 55 years old, climbs into an 8-foot dinghy with her husband of 25 years, Brian. They are heading back to their sailboat, a 46-foot Morgan sloop named Soulmate, anchored at Aunt Pat's Bay near Elbow Key. The water is protected. The route is familiar. They have lived on this boat for years. By 4:00 a.m., Brian is walking into a boatyard in Marsh Harbor, telling someone his wife is missing. He says she fell from the dinghy, that she had the engine kill switch lanyard, that when she fell the engine died, that the wind blew him away, that he paddled for hours, that he last saw her swimming toward shore as the sun went down. 4 days later, Bahamian police arrest him. They hold him for 5 days. They release him without charges. He flies back to Michigan, telling reporters he is heartbroken, but here is what no one knew at the time. In 1999, 27 years earlier, Brian Hooker's first wife walked into a Michigan courthouse and filed a protection order. In it, she alleged he had threatened her with an accident. She described rages, destruction, and violence. The order was granted. The marriage ended. And then Brian found Lynette. Now in 2026, his second wife has disappeared at sea. And the story he is telling is the same word his first wife heard in 1999. The boat they lived on was not just evidence, it was a witness. And its name was Soulmate. Lynette Hooker grew up on water. Her mother, Darlene Hamlet, said the family spent their lives near lakes, on boats, sailing and swimming. Lynette was not a tourist, she was a sailor. She and Brian documented their travels on social media as the Sailing Hookers. For years, the Soulmate was their home, their office, their world. A 46-foot Morgan sloop with navigation systems, communication equipment, and according to questions later raised by family, a thermal camera that Brian did not use to search for Lynette that night. But the image of a happy sailing couple hid a pattern that began long before the Bahamas. In January 2026, 3 months before the disappearance, Lynette called her daughter, Carly Aylesworth. She told her that in 2024, during a fight on the boat, Brian had threatened to throw her overboard. In February 2026, Brian attempted suicide. He was hospitalized for roughly 10 days at a Veterans Affairs facility and released. On April 5, 2026, the day after Lynette vanished, Brian called family friends Blaine and Marnie Stevenson. In a recorded conversation, he described the night as a cascade of failures. He said Lynette bounced off the dinghy, that they were not wearing life jackets, that law enforcement did not arrive until 4 a.m., and that he told police he would stay in the Bahamas until I get my wife back. Left the next day. His mother, he said, was not well. Lynette's daughter, Carly, received the news in a phone call from Brian on Sunday night. She said he was matter of fact. "Hey, your mom is missing. We don't know where she is. She's been missing since last night, but we're gonna come up there soon to see you." Then he hung up. Carly's first question was the same one any sailor would ask. If your partner falls in the water, why wouldn't you drop anchor? Why paddle the other way? If it were her, she said, she would be out in the middle of the ocean with you. At least we'll be alive and together. Here is the exact sequence. 7:30 p.m. April 4, Brian and Lynette leave Hopetown in the 8-foot dinghy. Brian later says they were returning to the Soulmate at Aunt Pat's Bay. He says Lynette fell overboard, that she had the engine safety lanyard, the kill switch key, and when she fell, the engine stopped, that the wind was too strong. That he paddled but could not reach her, that she was swimming toward shore at sundown, and then she was gone. But experienced sailors immediately noted a problem. A kill switch lanyard is designed so that if the operator falls overboard, the engine stops. If Lynette was a passenger and fell out, the lanyard should not have gone with her. If she was operating the dinghy and fell, the engine would stop, but Brian's account suggests he was left drifting, unable to restart it, which implies he was not the one wearing it. The Sea of Abaco is protected water. The route is short, and Lynette was a lifelong boater. Overnight, Brian says he paddled for hours. The dinghy drifts and beaches near Marsh Harbor. He says he walked through bush until he found the boatyard. 4:00 a.m. April 5. Brian arrives at the boatyard and reports Lynette missing. April 5-7. Royal Bahamas Police, Defence Force, Hopetown Volunteer Fire and Rescue, and the U.S. Coast Guard conduct marine and land searches, aerial surveillance, and drone operations. No trace of Lynette is found. The search shifts from rescue to recovery. April 8. Bahamian police arrest Brian Hooker. An assistant commissioner tells Reuters the detention is based on some probable cause. While handcuffed during a police search of the Soulmate, Brian loses his balance and falls overboard into turbulent water. His attorney says he took in a lot of water before his life vest pulled him up. He injures his knee, April 10. Brian is questioned again. His attorney says police focused on the couple's personal life and did not ask about evidence from the boat or electronic devices. April 13. After 5 days in custody, Brian is released without charges. He tells ABC News he will stay to search for Lynette. The next day, he leaves for Michigan. April 16. Cadaver dogs from the U.S. Coast Guard arrived to assist. By then, Brian Hooker was already gone, and the Soulmate was still anchored in Bahamian waters. The case broke open not because of a confession, but because of digital evidence and a boat that tried to leave. In late May 2026, forensic analysis of Brian's electronic devices revealed GPS data that did not match his account. The data showed his device was out on the water, stopping in the Sea of Abaco, before returning, giving investigators a more precise location to search than the area Brian had described. On June 8, the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Margaret Norvell arrived in Marsh Harbor carrying specialized divers. They were granted permission by the Bahamian government to search previously unsearched areas based on the GPS coordinates. The mission included remotely operated underwater vehicles, unmanned aerial systems, and a cadaver dog named Maggie from the Broward County Sheriff's Office, but the most significant discovery was not underwater. It was on the boat. In July 2026, NewsNation reported that family sources believed Lynette may have made it back to the Soulmate that night. According to these sources, authorities found signs of a fight on board, possible foul play, and evidence suggesting Lynette was dead on board before any overboard story was constructed. Detectable DNA found aboard the Soulmate led investigators to collect family samples from Lynette's relatives to allow for familial comparison, suggesting the samples found were limited or degraded, requiring familial matching to confirm. Then came the interception. On May 9, 2026, 1 month after Lynette's disappearance, the U.S. Coast Guard seized the Soulmate approximately 40 nautical miles off Melbourne, Florida. The boat was being moved by hired captains who had no idea they were transporting evidence. Bodycam footage released in July shows the moment of seizure. One captain responds with a single word. "Oh, Brian Hooker was not aboard." The Coast Guard also took custody of the dinghy, transferring it from Bahamian authorities to the United States for forensic examination. The Soulmate was no longer a home. It was evidence, and the man who had named it was 1,500 miles away. If Lynette made it back to the Soulmate, the dinghy was not the scene of her disappearance. It was the cover story. Brian's account requires all of the following to be true: that a lifelong sailor fell from a small boat without a life jacket, that she had the kill switch, that the wind was too strong for her husband to paddle back, that she did not grab a floating cushion he tossed, and that she vanished in protected waters she had navigated for years. But if she reached the Soulmate, if the signs of a fight and the DNA evidence are correct, then the 46-foot sloop becomes the actual scene, and the 8-foot dinghy becomes the alibi. A vessel small enough and unstable enough that a tragic accident would seem plausible, sending search crews to the wrong areas for weeks, while the real story was on the boat that bore the name Soulmate. The weapon was not a gun or a knife. It was the narrative. As of today, the investigation remains active under the Coast Guard Investigative Service and the FBI, but several critical gaps have no public answer. The mystery sailboat. On May 5, 2026, the Coast Guard released images of a second sailboat moored near the Soulmate at Aunt Pat's Bay on the night of April 4. They asked the public to help identify the owner, stating the occupants may have information relevant to the CGIS investigation. As of August 2026, no public identification has been announced. The thermal camera. Family members and investigators have raised the question of why Brian did not use the Soulmate's thermal imaging equipment to search for Lynette that night. If she was in the water or on land, a thermal camera would have detected her body heat. The absence of this search has not been explained. The officer involved shooting discrepancy. Police initially stated that officers discharged their weapons and neutralized the suspect during the April 8 search. A preliminary autopsy attributed Brian's fall overboard injury to the incident, but the exact nature of the police interaction during his handcuffed fall into turbulent water has not been fully clarified. The 2015 domestic disturbance. In Kentwood, Michigan, police responded to a call at the Hooker residence. Brian claimed Lynette struck him. Lynette, noted as highly intoxicated, claimed he struck her. A prosecutor dismissed the case for insufficient evidence. The report exists, but no charges were filed. And then there is the daughter from Brian's first marriage, Carly Hooker. In May 2026, she told News Nation, "He's threatened it, I'm pretty sure, multiple times. He said he was going to do this, and now it's happening." The warning signs were not hidden. They were scattered across 3 decades, visible only in retrospect. In 1999, Elizabeth Hoseth walked into a Michigan courthouse and wrote, "In our most recent interaction on Oct. 2, 1999, he threatened me with an accident." She described rages, destroyed furniture, and physical abuse. The protection order was granted. In 2024, Brian allegedly threatened to throw Lynette off the boat. She told her daughter in January 2026. In April 2026, Lynette disappeared at sea. And Brian told authorities it was an accident, the same word, the same man, 2 different wives, 1 protection order, 1 missing body, and a boat named Soulmate that may have been the last place Lynette Hooker was seen alive. Marnie Stevenson, the family friend who recorded Brian's call on April 7, put it this way, "Since Lynette first went missing, we have learned a lot about their past. Not one piece of information, person or associate has said anything nice or redeeming about Brian. So no, I am not expecting a story to surface that shows he saved an orphanage or started a battered wives' clinic. It's all been bad. Lynette Hooker's body has never been found." The Coast Guard concluded its Bahamas search in June without recovering her. The case has shifted from a missing persons inquiry to a federal investigation into the possible foreign murder of a U.S. national. No charges have been filed. Brian Hooker remains in Michigan. His attorney, Crystal Horser, hung up the phone when CBS News asked about the mystery sailboat, but the investigation is not stalled. It is waiting for one specific piece of information. On May 5, the Coast Guard published a photograph. It shows a sailboat moored within sight of the Soulmate at Aunt Pat's Bay on the night Lynette disappeared. The occupants of that boat have never been identified. The Coast Guard believes they may have seen something. They may have heard something. They may know whether Lynette Hooker ever made it back to the boat that night. The image is public. The tip line is open. And somewhere, a person who was anchored 50 yards from a 46-foot Morgan sloop named Soulmate on April 4, 2026, has not yet come forward. If you were on that boat, or if you know who was, the Coast Guard wants to hear from you. Because the difference between an accident and a crime may not be in the water. It may be in the memory of someone who was close enough to see the Soulmate that night, and has been silent ever since.